It wasn't a crash. It wasn't even a radio outburst. It was the silence afterward that told the story. After Singapore, as the mechanics rolled the orange car back into the garage, Oscar Piastri didn't speak. No handshake with his engineer, no glance toward Lando Norris. Just a quiet walk past the cameras, the kind that says more than words ever could. Inside McLaren, the tension feels real now. Fair racing has become a slogan, not a promise. And when a driver starts doubting whether he's being treated equally, every strategy call becomes a test of loyalty. That's where the whispers began, not in Italy or Britain, but in the paddock corners of Singapore. Whispers that the calm, calculated Australian might already be looking elsewhere. If you love Formula One stories that show the people behind the helmets, hit subscribe and let's dig into what's really happening at McLaren. The spark came from Switzerland. Blick, a paper known for digging into Formula One's hidden corners, reported that Oscar Piastri had set his sights on Ferrari for 2027. No photos, no quotes, just a single line that sent the paddock spinning. The timing couldn't have been sharper. Ferrari's driver lineup is due for a major reset. Both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc have contracts expiring at the end of 2026. Hamilton's debut year in red has been rough. Tense radios, self-doubt in Spain, and the feeling that Maranello's promise of no number one may not hold. So when Blick linked Piastri to Ferrari, it wasn't just fantasy, it fit the pattern. A world-class young driver leading the championship, frustrated with team politics, and watching the door to Formula One's most famous garage quietly open. And yet, Piastri's deal with McLaren, renewed in March 2025, supposedly runs through 2028, which means if he really wants out, something bigger must be brewing behind closed doors. On paper, Oscar Piastri is locked in. His McLaren contract, signed in early 2025, stretches to 2028, a symbol of commitment after his breakthrough season. But in Formula One, contracts are never as solid as they look. Top drivers often hold what insiders call performance clauses, secret exit hatches that trigger if the team drops below a certain level. Fernando Alonso used one to leave Alpine. Daniel Ricciardo had one when he left Renault. And now whispers say Piastri's deal might include something similar tied to 2026 performance targets. That's why the next 18 months matter so much. The sport's entire rulebook changes in 2026. New engines, new chassis, new pecking order. If McLaren stumbles, Oscar could walk away without paying a cent. If they thrive, he's locked in with no easy exit. McLaren insists everything is stable, but behind the calm interviews, the legal teams are already thinking 2 years ahead, because the value of Piastri's signature may soon depend on how fast the papaya car stays after the reset. Every driver needs a manager. Oscar Piastri has a strategist. Mark Webber, 9-time Grand Prix winner, Red Bull veteran, and survivor of one of the most politically charged partnerships in modern F1, knows exactly what favoritism looks like. Back in 2010, Webber fought Sebastian Vettel for the world title and learned the hard way what equal treatment really meant inside a British-led team. The déjà vu isn't lost on him. When McLaren asked Piastri to let Norris through in Hungary, then stayed silent after the Turn 1 contact in Singapore, Webber reportedly made his feelings clear behind closed doors. To outsiders, McLaren's unity still looks intact, but Webber's influence is unmistakable. He's protecting his driver from becoming another polite number two. And when a manager like Webber starts pushing back, it forces everyone, from Andrea Stella to Zach Brown, to choose a side. That tension gives the Ferrari rumors extra weight, because Webber has proven before that he won't hesitate to move a client if trust inside the garage starts to break. Ferrari's driver lineup looks stable on paper, but the clock is ticking. Lewis Hamilton's deal runs only until the end of 2026, and his debut year in red has been anything but smooth. The Spanish Grand Prix mic radio meltdown, the self-criticism, the whispers about frustration with Ferrari's methods, all signs of a champion struggling to adapt. Charles Leclerc, meanwhile, faces his own crossroads, still without a world title, still battling inconsistency, and entering the final year of his contract. He's no longer untouchable. By 2027, Maranello could find itself with 1 or even 2 open seats. That's the moment Blake pointed to when linking Piastri to Ferrari, a young world championship contender, cool under pressure, fluent in data, and clean in reputation. Exactly the kind of driver Ferrari would need to rebuild. Fred Vasseur has repeatedly said Ferrari doesn't run a driver hierarchy. For Piastri, who's beginning to question fairness at McLaren, that promise might sound tempting. But history says Maranello's equal treatment rarely lasts long. Ferrari isn't the only team watching. Behind the curtain, Red Bull and Aston Martin have quietly joined the conversation. Former driver Ralf Schumacher recently hinted that Mark Webber has already spoken with Red Bull, the same team that once courted Piastri before he signed with McLaren. The logic is simple. If Max Verstappen ever walks away, or if Red Bull's post-Newey era falters, they'll need a proven winner who brings calm and control. Piastri fits that profile perfectly. Aston Martin, too, could become a wildcard. Fernando Alonso has hinted that 2026 might be his final season, and with Adrian Newey now steering their design project, their next car could be a rocket. For Piastri, that's the kind of opportunity you don't ignore. Each of these scenarios strengthen his position inside McLaren, because once a driver knows he has options, loyalty becomes leverage, and leverage in Formula One changes everything. Inside McLaren, every briefing now feels heavier. The engineers avoid eye contact when strategy questions come up. Norris's side of the garage celebrates a little louder, Piastri's side watches a little closer. The championship lead, just 22 points, has become a psychological battlefield. What once looked like healthy rivalry now feels like silent warfare. Singapore's contact at turn 1 wasn't catastrophic, but McLaren's decision to take no action spoke volumes. It confirmed what many in the paddock had whispered for weeks, that the team might be leaning British when things get tight. Andrea Stella insists both drivers are free to race. Zach Brown insists there's no favoritism. But the tone in Piastri's post-race interviews has changed. Fewer smiles, more guarded answers. For a 24-year-old leading the World Championship, trust matters more than trophies. And if that trust continues to erode, even a title might not be enough to keep him in orange. Everything now points to a single decision: stay loyal or bet on a reset. The 2026 regulation overhaul will redraw Formula One's entire map. New engines, lighter cars, fresh aerodynamics. Nobody knows who will get it right. For Piastri, that uncertainty could define his future. If McLaren nails the transition, he'll have built his legacy from within, the Australian who conquered Woking and silenced the doubters. But if the papaya car slips, the exit clause whispers become an exit strategy. Ferrari, Aston Martin, Red Bull, all watching, all waiting. That's why this story isn't just about a rumor. It's about power, trust, and how quickly both can vanish in Formula One. The next 6 races will decide more than a championship. They'll decide who Oscar Piastri becomes. Because sometimes the biggest moves in F1 aren't made on track. They're made in silence, long before the lights go out. If you want to see where this tension leads, watch our next episode, McLaren Civil War, Norris versus Piastri, the point where it breaks.